Sri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Yena Bhutare Swayam Rupakaram Ayam Darati Swaparantikam Vandeham Siguru Siyata Padakamaram Shrigarun Vaishnavam Scha Sri Rupam Sagadatam Sahagana Raganatam Vitam Stam Sajevam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Sri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakan Vitam Scha Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pastaya Bhutare Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Tinamane Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pacharine Nirvishesa Sunyvari Praskita De Satarine Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Narayanam Namaskritam Naram Chaivanarotamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayo Dhirat Nishta Prayashu Bhadresu Nitya Bhagavata Sevya Bhagati Otamashaki Bhaktir Bhavati Naistiki Nigama Kapadur Garitam Param Shukam Karamita Dravisamitam Pibata Bhagatam Rashamarayam Mohora Hora Sikabhuvi Babakam Krishna Swadam Apagate Dharmikin Hishaha Karonasta Drishamasha Paranako Dunoditaham Tamapiyadavashuta Vishatam Vibosam Apirana Viram Viruksiram Prakyahido Homaradam Sanklesha Nirvana Musanti Nyanyatam Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Shiva Siddhi Gaur Bhaktavindam Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Welcome. Transcendental Tuesday, coming to you from Spanish Fork, Utah. Thanks for joining us, Anjali. Welcome to TT. We'll launch right into the subject matter today. Our topic is favorable devotional service, which indicates there's such a thing as unfavorable devotional service as well. Naturally, we want to do favorable service rather than unfavorable service. We want to go towards the one and away from the other. So hopefully we'll give you a little bit more direction in those regards. Good morning, Jimmy, and Terry as well. 38th verse, 3rd chapter, 1st canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, this Tuesday morning. Saveda dato padavim parasya darancha viryasya ratangapane yomaya santa ta Yanuvrityaha bhajeti tadpada saroja gandham. Only those who render unreserved, uninterrupted, favorable service under the lotus feet of Lord Krishna, who carries the wheel of the chariot in his hand, can know the Creator of the universe in his full glory, power, and transcendence. Good morning, Prashant. We always welcome your supplying the many references that we direct our listeners to. And I hope that they take advantage of those links and maybe just every day try to commit a new verse to memory. It's a very powerful practice which embeds the philosophy within you. In this verse, the Lord is described as the one who carries the wheel of his chariot in his hand. So if you're not familiar with the background of the Mahabharata and the Kurukshetra war, this may sound like an odd way of addressing the Supreme Lord of Lords, one who carries the wheel of his chariot in his hand. What's all that about? The background story is in the 9th chapter of the 1st canto. This is the 37th verse. It's in connection with Bhisma, a great devotee of the Lord. He's referred to as grandfather because he was quite elderly. He had trained many of the young Kaurava princes and Pandava princes. He'd been their guardian and protector throughout their whole lives. He was their most revered mentor, teacher, and grandfather. Krishna arranged it due to the inscrutable will of the Lord. The Lord moves in mysterious ways, his wonders to perform, plants his footsteps on the sea and rides upon the storm. Deep in unfathomable minds of never-failing skill, he treasures up his bright designs and works his never-failing will. Judge not the Lord by feeble sense, but trust him for his grace. Behind a frowning providence, he hides a smiling face. His purposes will ripen fast, unfolding every hour. The bud may have a bitter taste, but sweet will be the flower. So the inscrutability of the Lord is revealed probably never more so than in the case of Bhisma. Bhisma was a great, pure devotee of the Lord, but some or other, by the Lord's arrangement, Bhisma ended up on the Kaurava side as the general of Duryodhana's army, opposing the Pandavas. Bhisma had a lot of affection for the Pandavas, who were his most apt and devoted students in their infancy. So Duryodhana came to Bhisma during the course of the Kurukshetra war and accused Bhisma of not fighting with full force. Of course, Bhisma was fighting with full force against the ordinary soldiers. He was a Maharata and dispatching up to 10,000 of the Pandavas per day. But he was avoiding, at least in Duryodhana's opinion, the Pandavas. And when he would intersect with the Pandavas, Duryodhana accused him of softening his approach. That inasmuch as he had affection for the Pandavas, Duryodhana said, you don't really have what it takes to kill the Pandavas. Unless we take down the Pandavas, victory is going to be elusive for us. Well, Bhisma was stung by these words of Duryodhana, as was Duryodhana's intention. So Bhisma said, I have 5 arrows, and I'll use these arrows to kill the 5 Pandavas tomorrow. He made this promise. Now Duryodhana knew how affectionate Bhisma was to the Pandavas. He knew how soft-hearted he was, and so he said, why don't you give me the arrows for safekeeping tonight, and I'll return them to you in the morning. Bhisma did that, and then Arjuna came to Duryodhana on the instructions of Lord Krishna, who knows everything. He's Sarvasya Chahamridi Shanivsto. He's in the hearts of every living being. He knows what we're going to do before we even do it. So Krishna knew about it. Was a secret between, Bhisma said, don't tell anybody, and Duryodhana said to Bhisma, don't tell anybody. Let's just keep this between us two. But you can't keep things from God, because he knows what you're going to do even before you know what you're going to. Sarvata paripadam tat sarvata sutimo loke. He has ears and eyes everywhere. He witnesses everything. You don't get away with things in God's creation. You may break the secular law and escape punishment, but you cannot escape the witnessing eyes of God. His witnessing eyes are the sun at night and the moon during the day and the moon at night. So even though it was a close-kept secret just between Bhisma and Duryodhana, Krishna knew about it immediately. And so he sent Arjuna. It was often the case that the warriors, while trying to kill each other during the day, visited each other's tents at night and fraternized. Then they would go back to trying to kill each other as soon as the sun rose the next day. So Arjuna visited Duryodhana that evening, and it's customary that when you're visited by a peer or a superior, you say, what can I do for you? Engage me in some service. So Arjuna said, I'll take those 5 arrows. So Duryodhana, he had no choice. Even the bad guys at least had some level of integrity in those days. I don't think the bad guys have any level of integrity, or even the good guys have any level of integrity nowadays in the Kali Yuga. Prashant has come up with that verse, Sarvasya Chahamridi Sanavisto, 15:15 in Bhagavad Gita. Lord is within everyone's heart. Thank you for that, Prashant. Duryodhana handed over the arrows. And when Bhisma came for his arrows in the morning, Duryodhana was kind of shamefaced, wouldn't meet his eye. And he said he was hemming and hawing. Finally, he revealed that he'd given the arrows to Arjuna. So Bhima said, okay, well, I don't have 5 arrows to kill the 5 Pandavas. I have to modify my promise. That he said, Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, has descended as the friend, Saratya Parashara Sevana Sokya Dotya Varashagamam Stavanu Signasu Jagat Panatim Cha Vishnu Bhaktim Karoti Nipadascharanavine. Devotional service, or bhakti yoga, favorable devotional service, is so powerful that the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is unconquerable even by big demons like Hiranyakashipu and Ravana, becomes conquered by the love of his devotees. Because of the love of Yudhishthira, Arjuna, his brother Bhima, Nakula, and Sahadev, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, as we read in the Mahabharata, acted variously as the cousin brother of the Pandavas, their messenger, their envoy, their ambassador to Duryodhana, their servant, their order carrier, and ultimately the chariot driver of Arjuna. So powerful is devotional service that it captures the Supreme Personality of Godhead who created millions and millions of universes. Krishna says, Aham sarvasya prabhava, mata sarvam pravardhate. Everything comes from me. Both the material and spiritual worlds come from me. And those who are wise worship me with all their hearts. And when the wise worship Krishna with all their hearts, Krishna worships the wise with all of his heart. And he subordinates himself to the love of his devotees. So Krishna had made a promise that he would act on the side of the Pandavas as a chariot driver, but he would not engage in hostilities. He would not take up arms against the Kauravas. God claims all living beings as his sons, and in that sense he's equal, and he's partial to all. He's not partial to anybody. He's partial to all living beings. He loves the Kauravas, the bad guys, as much as he loves the good guys. He's on the side of the good guys because they're rendering favorable devotional service to him. He's helping them to defeat the bad guys, but he also loves the bad guys. It's just that because of their opposition to the plan of the Lord is obliged to take a certain antagonistic posture. But that doesn't mean he doesn't love them. A parent whose child is misbehaving may appear not to like the child. The parent may have to ground the child in their bedroom, or make them go to their room, or stay home for a week. They may ground them for a week, and it may appear that the parent doesn't like the child, or that the parent's the enemy of the child, but actually the parent loves the child. It's just that because of the child's capriciousness and tendency to get in trouble and disobedience, the parent has to take more or less an antagonistic, confrontational posture vis-a-vis the child. The parent doesn't enjoy it. The parent would rather have the child sitting on his lap and talking very amiably, and like the buzzing of bumblebees. But if the child is disobedient, for the child's sake, the parent has to take a more hard line, a tougher role. So Krishna loved samaham sarvabhutishu name dveshastina paraha ye bhajanti tu mam bhaktya maite teshu chapyaham. He says, I'm equal to all living beings. I don't have favorites, but if someone renders service to me, then I, because of Krishna or God's high-mindedness, he becomes especially indebted and especially attached to those devotees. Hence, Krishna is the chariot driver of the Pandavas. Hence, he's weighing in on the side of the Pandavas. But he said, because I actually have affection for the Kauravas as well, they're just misguided, I'm not going to take up weapons. So Bhishma said, he made a promise that was directly against Krishna's promise, because he'd heard and he knew, as an intimate of Krishna, that the promise of Krishna's devotees, because the devotees have captured Krishna, Krishna will break his promise in order to keep the promise of the devotees. That's a big thing. According to the will and determination of God, the planets pursue their orbits at thousands of miles an hour and never crash into each other. The sun rises and sets. Madbayat bhatyavatiyam sudistapati mad varsatindo dahatiyam ritus chariti madbayat. Everything goes on with incredible order and synchronicity by the will of God, by the determination of God, by the promise of God. Things we call physical laws are not at all laws. They are just the constant, steady determination of God, millennium after millennium. There's no law of gravity. It is just that God has ordained that what goes up must come down. And by God's will and by God's ordination, that is constant, millennium after millennium after millennium. And we've never seen a deviation. We've never seen an exception to that, except maybe when God comes himself, like Ram did, wrote his name on the rocks, tossed the rocks into Sri Lanka. The rocks floated, they built a bridge to Sri Lanka. But other than God's own suspension of his own will, we don't see any exceptions. So century after century, millennium after millennium, We observe that what goes up goes down, so we call it the law of gravity. But it is the determination and the will of the Lord. It is unbreakable and unshakable. It is all-powerful, except, and this is huge. I mean, try to grasp the power of bhakti. Can't compare to yoga, asceticism, mental speculation. The power of bhakti is that God's determination, God's will, can be subordinated to the will of the devotee. There's nothing that can equal bhakti. Bhisma, knowing this dynamic as a pure devotee of Krishna, he said, either Krishna will break his promise and take up a weapon, or I will kill his friend Arjuna. If Krishna does not break his promise, I will kill Arjuna. Bhisma knew that Krishna would never stand by and let his devotee be killed. Bhisma knew that there's nothing higher, there's nothing more dear to the Lord than his devotee. So he knew that, of course, Krishna's going to break his promise. And also, Bhisma fully expected that when Krishna took up a weapon to save the life of his devotee Arjuna, that Krishna would be so enraged at this aggression against Arjuna that Bhisma would die. So this was kind of like a suicide pact that Bhisma was making with Krishna. Bhisma was saying, Arjuna, your most intimate friend, versus myself, who am also a pure devotee, but I don't have the intimacy with you that Arjuna does. So he's saying to Krishna, you're going to have to decide. And Bhisma fully expected that Krishna would break his promise and protect his most intimate friend. Bahuni me vyatitani janmani tani ham vedasa nitam veda parantapa. Krishna says to Arjuna in the 4th chapter, both you and I have taken many, many births. Arjuna is a constant companion of Krishna. He's the most dear entity in all of creation. So much so that when Krishna descends, Arjuna descends with him. They're a pair, Nara and Narayan. Bhisma fully expected that if he threatened with lethal force the life of Krishna's friend Arjuna, that Bhisma would die. And then, of course, he'd get off the hook with Duryodhana, because he would die in the course of trying to fulfill his promise to Duryodhana. And he wanted to die, actually. That's a whole nother story. Bhisma was ready to die. He was ready to leave his body. He'd been around long enough. He never wanted to take birth as a mortal in the first place. He was one of the Vasus, but he made a mistake. And anyway, some other time we'll tell that whole story. So, Krishna is described here as one who carries the wheel of the chariot in his hand. So, Caru, get to the point. Tell us what that means. You've had enough leading up to it. You've had enough of a prelude. Okay. Thanks for joining us, Dibya. Thanks for joining us, Manasaganga. Shanigamama Bahama Peramritamari Katama Blutora Testa, Dite Charana Byakstaragur, Harimi Vahantimi Bamgadotoria. Bhisma says, after the fact, recalling this incredible celebrated incident, Bhisma attacked Arjuna. His arrows were like volleys and volleys, like rainfall. His arrows were cutting the bow of Arjuna. They were destroying the chariot of Arjuna. They were piercing the armor of Arjuna. Arjuna was like in a blizzard, in a force 5 hurricane. The power of Bhisma came to bear 100% on Arjuna. Arjuna was overwhelmed, outmanned. He was hanging on by a thread. Nobody had ever. Bhisma was like death personified. People couldn't even look at Bhisma. So terrifying was he on the battlefield. Finally, it came to the point Arjuna was defenseless. He had no bow, he had no quiver, he had no chariot, he had no armor. His flag was cut down. And Bhisma was about to minister the coup de grace, and finally Krishna couldn't stand it anymore. He didn't pick up a weapon per se. He didn't pick up a lance or a javelin, sword, or bow and arrow. So in that sense, he kind of broke his promise, but he didn't. The chariot wheel, Arjuna's chariot, had been broken. You see, Krishna picked up Drite Rata Charana Byaks Chadadgur. He picked up the chariot wheel and he ran towards Bhisma to kill Bhisma. And Bhisma's like, yes, Lord, I'm here. Take me. Take me. It'll be such a blessing to be personally killed by the hand of the Lord. And then the day ended. The sun was sinking on the horizon, and it was the custom, the tradition, that when the day ended and the light waned, all hostilities would cease. So just at the moment when Krishna was running towards Bhisma, the hostilities stopped. And as Bhisma had been stopped just short of killing Arjuna, Krishna, and everything's his arrangement, he controls the sun, the moon, the twilight, the morning, the evening, the afternoon. By Krishna's arrangement, he didn't have to kill Bhisma after all, but simply threatening him, running towards him in a protective mood, just like a mother lion runs towards the aggressor in order to protect their cub. Krishna stopped Bhisma from killing his intimate friend. So the translation of this verse is, Bhisma says, fulfilling my desire and sacrificing his own promise, Krishna got down from the chariot, took up his wheel, and ran towards me hurriedly. Just as a lion goes to kill an elephant, he even dropped his outer garment on the way. So Bhisma wanted to please Krishna. He wanted to provoke Krishna. He wanted Krishna to reveal how special his favorable devotees are. And he also wanted to reveal how, inasmuch as Bhisma had made a promise which directly contradicted Krishna's promise, Bhisma wanted to show the whole world that Krishna would break his own promise in order to fulfill the promise of his devotees. So tell me out there, all you mental speculators, all you scholars, all you academicists, all you yogis, all you ascetics, tell me how your practice is more powerful than Bhakti Yoga. Just tell me. You can write it down in the comment section. Tell me, or give me instances or references whereby the Lord becomes captured by mental speculation or yoga or asceticism or knowledge of scriptures or jnana or intellectualism or that, and I'll tell you can't do it. It is Bhaktya mam abhijansi yavan yas chasmita tato mam tatvado vishate tad anantara. Only those who render unreserved, uninterrupted, undivided devotional service, like Arjuna, like Bhisma, only those know the Lord, and to those only the Lord reveals himself as he is in his original transcendental form. Bhisma's talking here again. 22nd verse, Prashant, 9th chapter, 1st canto, Srimad Bhagavatam. Tatapi ekanta bhaktishu bhashe bhupanokampatam yanmaya shuns chajata shakshad Krishna darsanam aganam. Tatapi ekanta bhaktishu. Ekanta bhaktishu means God is, as I said, he's equal. We're all his children, not just black or white or Hindu or Christian or Jew, not even just human beings, but all living beings are parts and parcel of God. We're his sons. Aham bija pradapita, bijamam sarvabhutanam vidi partha sanatanam. In that sense, just like a king is equally disposed, he's obliged and inclined towards protecting all of his citizens equally. He'll take up arms himself personally. He'll patrol. He'll engage and hire armed forces, police, in order that citizens can execute their duties and live peacefully and piously. But yet, the son of the king, he has special regard and concern for him. Bhisma says, Tatapi ekanta bhaktishu. despite the Lord being equally unfavorably disposed towards all living beings. Bashe bupanuka yanme suns jajada shakshad. Shaksha means the king may remotely protect his citizenry. The citizenry may feel sheltered and protected and safe their whole life long in the kingdom without ever actually personally seeing the king in their neighborhood or on their block or in their city. However, Bhishma is saying here that he's not only seeing Krishna in his proximity, not only seeing Krishna on the part of the battlefield where he lies, his body perforated with arrows through and through, but Krishna is coming before him, giving him Shakshad Bhagavat, the Lord of millions and millions of universes, the unconquerable Supreme Personality of Godhead, is humbly, submissively standing, giving his darshan to Bhishma, his great surrendered devotee, at the time that Bhishma is ending his life. And why is that, everybody? Why and how is it that God is standing, giving, donating his darshan before his devotees, so that at the very critical moment, ante kale chamameva, shmadan bukpa kalevaram, whatever you've done, whatever you've given, whatever you've learned, if it does not lend itself to your recollection of Krishna at the time of leaving this body, it's a waste of time. So in order to assist and to ensure that Bhishma think of Krishna at the time of death, he's personally appearing before Bhishma while leaving his body. Why? Why Bhishma? Why not scholars and mental speculators and yogis and gyanis and tyagis? Because Bhishma says, Krishna Darshanama, I am his unflinching servant. That is the key. That is the key to conquer the unconquerable Supreme Personality of Godhead. I was just reading in the third canto, Yashamritam Yasha Bhagavan Ramalam. Krishna says to a devotee, now you have realized me by chanting my holy names, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Therefore, now that you've become purified, and now that you've put aside all other mental and speculative and fruitive pursuits and dedicated yourself 100% to the service of my lotus feet, now that you have tendered your all to me, if my arm offends the devotee, I will lop it off. This is a statement from the Supreme Person that if his arm offends a pure devotee engaged in the service of the Lord, Krishna says, I will lop off that offending arm. If we see that Bhishma had all the yogic qualifications, he had all the intellectual expertise of others. There was no mental speculator that had more knowledge than Bhishma. Tarabasamita Girasha Hashanir. Not only has Bhishma fought on thousands and thousands of battlefields during his long and distinguished life, but Gira Shahashunir, he had also spoken and discoursed on thousands and thousands of subject matter with thousands and thousands of different shades and innuendos of meanings. So he not only fought as a warrior, but he also spoke as a great learned scholar. I have the unabridged translation of the Mahabharata. It was rendered into English sometime around the turn of the century by a Bengali scholar named Ganguly. It's 12 volumes long, small print, 800 pages per volume. And after the Battle of Kurukshetra, the Kurukshetra battle concludes in about the 9th volume. So an entire volume is taken up by Bhishma as he's lying on the bed of the arrows, and the soldiers have gathered around him. Krishna said, you should go to Bhishma. He embodies culture, he embodies wisdom. There'll never be another like him on the planet. And Kali Yuga is coming, so you guys are going to need all the help you can get. So just go and listen to Bhishma as he's lying on the bed of arrows. Bhishma speaks for 1/12 of a 12-volume series. One volume is the speech of Bhishma about Varnashram, about duties, about worshiping the ancestors. The Vishnu Sahasranama, Vishnum Vashat Karo Bhuta Bhavana, is contained. There's so much in that one volume where Bhishma is speaking. Now, not only was he the foremost scholar and articulate communicator of the day, and not only was he the greatest warrior of the age, including Arjuna, remember he almost killed Arjuna had not Krishna intervened, but he was also a great yogi. If you were listening carefully to what I said, he spoke 1/12 of the Mahabharata, which is 10 times long in the Iliad and the Odyssey, while lying on a bed of arrows, people. Through and through, he was punctured every square inch of his body by the arrows of Arjuna. He was lying on his back, and yet he didn't die. That's yoga. He was circulating his life air within the body. The body was ruined. Every vital organ was destroyed, and yet he maintained not only did he maintain his life air circulating with his body, but he also had perfect clarity of mind, and he was able to speak in such a way as to benedict the up-and-coming generations of warriors and kings with the full blessing of Vedic knowledge, with all the summarization of all the truths of the 4 Vedas. There was the battle was 18 days. The 10th day, Bhishma was felled by the arrows of Krishna. He lay on the bed of arrows for 8 more days, and then finally the Kauravas were defeated. Then the Pandavas and the survivors gathered, and Bhishma wanted to stay within his body until Makar Sankranti, which is the 14th of January. So the Kurukshetra war took place for 18 days. In December, we celebrate Christmas just as on Christmas. Well, if you translate Christmas into Sanskrit, Krishna, Christ, Krishna, and Mas is month. So Christmas, which generally comes in December, is the month of Krishna. Christmas, Krishna's Mas, because he spoke the Bhagavad Gita in December. And presumably he finished about maybe December 18th or December 20th. We generally celebrate Gita Jayanti, the speaking of the Bhagavad Gita, in the 2nd or 3rd week of December. But he had an interlude to pass before leaving his body on the 14th of January, when the sun passes from the southern to the northern horizon, northern hemisphere. So for 3 weeks, every morning, the soldiers, the kings would assemble before Bhishma, and he spoke every day while his body was perforated with arrows. So he's the greatest warrior of his time, he's the greatest scholar of his time, and he's the greatest yogi of his time. But it was due to none of those qualifications that Krishna appeared before him. It was because he was a devotee. And in fact, because he was a devotee, Krishna blessed him with martial skills. He blessed him with acute intellect. He blessed him with yogic powers. It was the bhakti, which is the king of all practices, the king of all virtues, following which all of the other qualifications, abilities, and talents of Bhishma clicked into place. Just like you have a queen walking grandly down a hallway in a palace with one of those skirts or dresses that would otherwise drag on the floor. So knowledge, athleticism, coordination, bodily beauty, yogic powers, blessing, they're personified holding the train of the queen, Bhakti. Wherever there's Bhakti, Yatra Yogeshwara Krishna, wherever there's Krishna and his devoted servant, there is knowledge, there is victory, and there is extraordinary morality. And so therefore, It is described here by Sutta Goswami. That man, Bhisma, who spoke on different subjects with thousands of meanings, and who fought on thousands of battlefields and protected thousands of men, stopped speaking and, being completely free from all bondage, withdrew his mind from everything and fixed his wide open eyes upon the original personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, who stood before him four-handed, dressed in yellow garments that glittered and shined. What is the key that unlocks this mystery? We see God standing before Bhisma at the time of leaving his body. How is it that God has become so preempted by this aged warrior? In the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, Anya Vilasita Sinyam, Jnana Karma, this is 1:111, Jnana Karmari Amitam, Anu Krishnano Krishnano Silanam, Bhaktir Uttama. The highest endeavor, the highest perfection of the human form of life is not mental speculation, it's not yoga, it's not martial skills, but it is devotional service performed unreservedly, uninterruptedly, unselfishly at the lotus feet of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Krishna. Prabhupada says in this verse from the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, Srila Rupa Goswami, the author, states that if anyone wants to execute unalloyed, unmixed, uncontaminated devotional service from Lord, he must be freed from the association of persons who are addicted to fruitive activities and mental speculation. When freed from such unwanted association and from the contamination of material desires, one favorably cultivates knowledge of Krishna. That is called pure devotional service. Growing up as a Christian before I met devotees, and I had the great blessing of meeting my spiritual master who delivered to me the essence of all scriptural truths. I had heard in the Episcopalian church to which my family attended that God was a jealous God. Thou shalt worship none other than me. This is what it is meant in the Judeo-Christian tradition when God declares himself as a jealous God. You shall have no other idols, not your gun collection, not your political party, not your Ford truck, not even your family, not even your country. There shall be no other gods above me, which means there will be no other area of human activity which supersedes undivided, unmotivated, uninterrupted devotional service to me. And Krishna makes the promise, Sarvadhamma Parijagya, if you subordinate all other allegiances, all other loyalties, and all other activities, if you subordinate to serving the Lord with purity and with selflessness, then if you do the great thing, if you fulfill the purpose for which you're created and execute the mission for which you're sent here, then all the little things will take care of themselves. Seek first the kingdom of God, and then everything else will be supplied. Ananyas chintayantamam yejana parabhasa tesam nitya vikram yoga sama vahamiham. Krishna says, for who is engaged in my undevotional service, he hadn't got to worry about keeping body and soul together, shelter, foodstuffs, sustenance, maintenance, protection. I preserve what talents and abilities that I have originally embedded within him. And if he needs more in order to pursue the great destiny, the unimaginable service, the dreams that he could not accomplish on his own, if he needs more in the course of fulfilling his mission, then I supply whatever he needs. And one who's engaged in the service of the Lord, there is never any lack, there's never any shortcoming, there's never any anxiety about the basic necessities of life. Nitya nityanam eko yo paradati kama. Krishna supplies, as the father of all living beings, is a normal procedure in the normal course of things. He supplies all 8,400,000 species of life spread throughout limitless universes. He supplies them all with shelter, food, family members, because they are his sons. He's equally disposed to all of them. He doesn't begrudge even the atheist They're basic necessities of life. However, for someone who is engaged specifically and especially in the service of the Lord, how much more the Lord is going to look out for him, how much more the Lord is going to go out of his way, and how personally Krishna is going to protect that devotee and embrace that devotee and clear out the obstacles in the way of that devotee and defeat the enemies of that devotee, and in the end be visible before that devotee at the time of leaving their body, and ultimately take that devotee back to home, back to Godhead, where life is eternal, full of bliss and knowledge. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Had trouble seeing who was with us yesterday, but one thing I tried to do was refresh and then see if the names of everybody who visited us pop up. They did yesterday, so I'm trying to refresh the Facebook page, and no, it's the list is still not coming. I don't know why. All I can see, Sundari Priya, thank you very much for your wonderful comments there. You lift me up too by your support and your encouragement and your attendance on these Monday, Tuesday, Wednesdays. Prashant, his latest quote is Ananyas Chintayanto Mam. He also came up with Sarvadana Prijagya from Nectar of Devotion. He came Anya Belasitas Sunyam Jnana Karmadi Anavritaham. And I honestly, I can't, it just gives me those four. It's just a mystery to me why I can't see everybody who's here. It's not that I'm not trying, folks, but for some reason, there's only four names that are visible. Let's chant Hare Krishna for a minute or two and see if I can't see more on the phone. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare
Krishna for a minute or two.
Whoops, that didn't work too well.
Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama,
Okay.
Rama, Hare Krishna for a minute or two.
Whoops, this is getting out. Okay, I'm sorry that I'm technically challenged, because I would really like to express my appreciation for those who are joining us. Okay, all right, here we go. I'm seeing on the phone Sanjay. Thank you very much, Sanjay, my old friend, joining us here. Prashant, all the quotes. Prashant is amazing. He's like a genie. Comes up with all those quotes. Please take advantage of the service that he's offering. He's with us every morning. He's right there pulling quotes up like rabbits from a hat. Bye, Bobby. Thanks for joining us. Govinda, also. There's some limits also even on the phone. Yeah, I'm still not seeing everybody, unfortunately. Anyway, there are advantages to doing this through Zoom and going on Facebook Live, one of which is you get to see these beautiful virtual backgrounds with our temple complex back here. And it feels good for me also to have that in front of me. I still haven't cracked how to discern who all has joined us during the course of this, but I will work on that. Every problem has a solution, and Krishna's within the heart. So thanks so much. This has been Transcendental Tuesday, which followed yesterday's Motivational Monday, and we will finish up our threesome of gatherings for this week tomorrow. It's Wisdom Wednesday, by having more to say on this very, very important and nectarine verse, which is the 38th verse, 3rd chapter, 1st canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. Until then, keep safe, keep healthy, keep your masks on, social distance, but most importantly, keep chanting Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.